the way to the UN global goals in 2030. There's no question that the Nordic region can and should go ahead on this development, as we even did on the United Nations after the Second World War, not at least in today's global society. So to conclude, there's no question in our minds that paternity leave is in the best interest of the child and the society. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Finland.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you, Eppu. And thank you, Johanna. If there are any questions, comments now in the chat. Okay. Starts feeling like I'm hosting some kind of gobbling program from old TV. Any comments from the chat? Okay. Any comments? Okay. There's the first one.
Maybe a stupid question, but how does paternity leave interact with visitation rights and custody? I'm asking because I have experience from Sweden where you could have parental leave but not have visitation rights.
Okay. Who wants to answer? I can't answer this question. Does Johanna has anything to say to this? I guess it wasn't a stupid question, it was too hard a question.
In Iceland it is if you are a custodial parent or you have a shared custody, you can have a paternity leave, a parental leave. But even though you have a parental leave, it's not guaranteed that you have a parenting time, because the residential parent does have a lot of influence on parenting time. So if you have shared custody, you can have the paternity leave, or yes, usually paternity leave when you're not the residential parent. If you are a non-custodial parent, which is most often the case, then you have then your parental leave is you have to have the agreement of the mother to have paternity leave.
Understanding this Finnish reform, we try to take in consider all different kind of families. Okay, Johanna, now you're saying something that I shouldn't say.
Is my mic?
Yeah.
So in order to take leave in Finland, you need to be a guardian of the child, and you don't need to live in the same home with the other parent, but you have to take care of the child in practice if you're taking leave. So the idea is that you are actually doing the child care while you are on leave. So I wouldn't, but in the new scheme it will be interesting to see if you can actually take benefit days without spending time.
The way to the UN global goals in 2030. There's no question that the Nordic region can and should go ahead on this development, as we even did on the United Nations after the Second World War, not at least in today's global society. So to conclude, there's no question in our minds that paternity leave is in the best interest of the child and the society. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Finland.
Thank you, Jesper. Thank you, Eppu. And thank you, Johanna. If if there are any questions, comments now in the chat. Okay, starts feeling like I'm hosting some kind of gobbling program from old TV. Any comments from the chat? Okay, any comments? Okay, there's the first one.
Maybe a stupid question, but how does paternity leave interacts with visitation rights and custody? I'm asking because I have experience from Sweden where you could have parental leave but not have visitation rights.
Okay, who wants to answer? I can't answer this question. Does Johanna has anything to say to this? I guess it wasn't a stupid question, it was too hard a question.
In Iceland, it is if you are a custodial parent or you have a shared custody, you can have a paternity leave, a parental leave. But even though you have a parental leave, it's not guaranteed that you have a parenting time because the residential parent does have a lot of influence on parenting time. So if you have shared custody, you can have the paternity leave, or yes, usually paternity leave when you are not the residential parent. If you are a non-custodial parent, which is most often the case, then you have then your parental leave is you have to have the agreement of the mother to have paternity leave.
Understanding this Finnish reform, we try to take in consider all different kind of family. Okay, Johanna, now you're saying something that I shouldn't say.
Is my mic?
Yeah.
So in order to take leave in Finland, you need to be a guardian of the child, and you don't need to live in the same home with the other parent, but you have to take care of the child in practice if you're taking leave. So the idea is that you are actually doing the child care while you are on leave. So I wouldn't, but in the new scheme it will be interesting to see if you can actually take benefit days without spending time.
And I will have a chance to talk a bit later on, but my two questions, I guess. One was going back to the statistical analysis from Iceland, and I think you also mentioned, Johanna, about the kind of effects on gender equality. And I think in Iceland you said it was a mixed results on gender equality, so I'm just interested to hear a bit more about that. And my second question was, it's really great that all these surveys are being done with fathers, because I think fathers have often been left out of these kind of surveys. But I wonder if there are any surveys which have asked mothers what they think about the father's parental paternity leave and the changes. I'd be interested to know.
So, possibly Inkel for still online, maybe answering for the gender equality question. Is he?
Am I on now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Inkel was about the gender equality. You had the question about the effects.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. You are online now. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard the question. Yes, question. Well, generally speaking, many countries have been moving closer to gender equality in the last few decades. For example, the gender pay gap in school. To separate the effects from education on women from the effects of parental leave is very difficult, if not impossible. We still see, however, that many employers are reluctant to hire particularly young women as they expect that they take more of leave. They freely admit that is expected of women's lives. So in general, I think, or I'm pretty sure, that the parental leave or the greater uptake by fathers of parental leave has helped to move gender equality forward, but I would have a hard time proving it.
The other question was for...
I don't know if this answers the question, but there are studies in...
But I haven't been back very many times since, so I'm going to go and have a look and see what I can remember. And I'm also really pleased to be part of a gender conference that has so many men in it. I go to so many gender conferences where there's about 3 men and 100 women, so really lovely to see so many men's faces. I've actually just been in Stockholm with a Men Engage Europe meeting. Men Engage is a big network of men for gender equality all over the world. There are about 700 organisations, and this was the Europe chapter. And we were talking a little bit about men in care in various countries as well. Do I have a clicker? Yes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is to talk a little bit about the context of how the State of the World's Fathers report came about. I'm going to talk a bit about its impact, and then what I think's changed since 2015 in terms of men and gender equality and men in care. And then a little bit about COVID. We have to talk about COVID, I think, these days. And then I'll go through the State of the World's Fathers 2021 report that we published. To get rid of my scan done. Okay, so do I just click the top, this one, the green? Okay. Yes, you saw in the last one there have been many other. There's been many different State of the World's Fathers reports, including your wonderful State of Nordic Fathers reports. But why did we need one? One of the reasons was that there had been State of the World's Mothers reports, State of the World's Children's reports that UNICEF produced, but there was nothing on men and boys. And Bumunda was an organisation working with another network called Men Care that felt that it was really important to look at fathers. The belief that gender equality and women's rights won't be achieved without engaging men as caregivers. That equality in unpaid care and domestic work, and I'll talk about that a bit later, is key if we are to address the root causes of gender inequality, which is why I wanted to ask that question about how much this affects gender equality. Fatherhood can be a tipping point, research shows, either towards more gender equal relationships, or, if things are not in place, towards much more orthodox, I think you called it, masculinities and orthodox relationships. And there are benefits of involved fatherhood, engaged fatherhood, not only for women, but for children and for men themselves and for society. And we've seen so much of that this morning. I've been really, really impressed with the presentations that you've come up with, the detail of what's happening in the Nordic countries. So that was the first report, and I think we had no idea of what kind of impact it was going to have. We knew that it was going to that it was needed. But actually we ended up launching it in 10 different countries. We had Chelsea Clinton coming to the launch in New York. There's been more than 30,000 downloads, 40 million social media mentions. It's had a lot of coverage, and I think, and translated into French, German, Portuguese, Russian, Polish and Spanish. And it's also had some policy impact, together with other things, difficult to measure if you're an evaluator, but it's contributed to changes in policy leave in the US, Brazil, Netherlands and elsewhere, I think, in the
ja miksei toimisi. Täällä ollaan siis Musiikkitalolla. Nordic Fathers on Paternity Leave Conferenceissa ja tää on järjestetty täällä 31.3.2022. Ja tilaisuuden avasi Thomas Blomqvist, tasa-arvoministerimme, ja sitten kello 10.15 Tom Timperi piti alustuksen Findings and Opposition on the Report State of Nordic Fathers. Sitten Tomin alustuksen jälkeen Kislasson, Ingolfur V. Kislasson University of Icelandilta. Hän piti esityksen Statistic Overview of Fathers Family Leave in the Nordic Countries. Ja kommentaattorina hänellä oli tässä hänen esitykseensä Mats Herzberg, Föreningen Vårdnad Boende Umgänge i Sverige, ja sitten Heimir Hilmarsson Equal Parenting Icelandista. Eli Heimir Hilmarsson ja Mats Herzberg kommentoivat Kislassonin tätä esitystä. Sitten pienen tauon jälkeen niin Johanna Lammitaskula, tutkimuspäällikkö Terveyden ja hyvinvoinnin laitokselta, piti alustuksen Finland's Parental Leave Reform in Nordic Comparison. What's in it for fathers? Ja tässä Johanna Lammitaskulan esityksessä Eppu Saarela oli kommentaattorina ja Eppu edustaa tässä siis Miesjärjestöjen keskusliittoa ja Jesper Loose vastaavaa tanskalaista järjestöä. Ja nyt sitten lounastauon jälkeen niin jatkamme ja iltapäivällä sitten on tulossa Involved Fatherhood in the Nordic Context, Dominant Narratives, Divergent Approaches. Ja tämän esityksen pitää Kanhild Reglan Farstad VID Specialized Universitystä. Ja sitten hänen esityksensä jälkeen Johanna Terävä Jyväskylän yliopistosta pitää esityksen Involved Fatherhood After Divorce, Fathers Perspectives on Co-Parenting After Parents Separation. Ja Johanna Terävän alustuksen kommentaattorina Joonas Kekkonen, Miessakit, ja sitten Gudorm Grunt Mansforum yhteisöstä. Gudorm Grunt, Joonas Kekkonen ja Gudorm Grunt. Näin. Ja sitten Johanna Terävän esityksen jälkeen tulee State of the World Fathers Report. Nikki van der Gaag pitää tämän koko maailman esityksen. Ja sitten tuossa 15.15 aloitetaan paneelikeskustelu, panel discussion of themes of the day, the positive effects of participating fatherhood and cooperative parenting. The positive effects of parental leave fathers have taken especially to children, fathers and the relationships between them and how to encourage and normalize fathers' participation in parenting and taking parental leave. Ja moderaattorina tässä on Saan Riks ja sitten tähän paneeliin osallistuvat Mats Herzberg, Haimiri Hilmarsson, Joonas Kekkonen ja näin tällä ohjelmalla mennään tonne kello 16. Eli katsotaan tässä taukojen aikana sitten lisää näitä yhteenvetoja. Eli kuuntelet ja katselet Radio Vapaa Helsingin koosteita täältä Nordic Fathers on Paternity Leave -konferenssista Helsingin Musiikkitalolta. Ja täällä paikan päällä Perussäijät ry:n edustajana Marko Ekvist toimittaa näitä tiivistelmiä tässä. Okei, palataan.
And I will have a chance to talk a bit later on, but my two questions, I guess. One was going back to the statistical analysis from Iceland. And I think you also mentioned, Johanna, about the kind of effects on gender equality. And I think in Iceland you said it was a mixed results on gender equality, so I'm just interested to hear a bit more about that. And my second question was, it's really great that all these surveys are being done with fathers, because I think, you know, fathers have often been left out of these kind of surveys. But I wonder if there are any surveys which have asked mothers what they think about the father's parental and paternity leave and the changes. I'd be interested to know.
So, possibly Inkel for still online, maybe answering for the gender equality question. Is he?
Am I on now? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Inkel was about the gender equality. You had the question about the effects.
Well, yes, I am.
Yeah. You are online now. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I heard the question. Yes, question. Well, generally speaking, countries have been moving closer to gender equality in the last few decades. For example, the gender pay gap in school. To separate the effects from education on women from the effects of parental leave is very difficult, if not impossible. We still see, however, that many employers are reluctant to hire particularly young women as they expect that they take more of the leave. They freely admit that is expected. So in general, I think, or I'm pretty sure, that the parental leave or the greater uptake by fathers of parental leave has helped to move gender equality forward, but I would have a hard time proving it.
The other question was for...
I don't know if this answers the question, but there are studies in...
About it, but I haven't been back very many times since, so I'm going to go and have a look and see what I can remember. And I'm also really pleased to be part of a gender conference that has so many men in it. I go to so many gender conferences where there's about 3 men and 100 women, so really lovely to see so many men's faces. I've actually just been in Stockholm with a Men Engage Europe meeting. Men Engage is a big network of men for gender equality all over the world. There are about 700 organisations, and this was the Europe chapter. And we were talking a little bit about men in care in various countries as well. Do I have a clicker? Yes. Okay. So what I'm going to do is to talk a little bit about the context of how the State of the World's Fathers report came about. I'm going to talk a bit about its impact, and then what I think's changed since 2015 in terms of men and gender equality and men in care. And then a little bit about COVID. We have to talk about COVID, I think, these days. And then I'll go through the State of the World's Fathers 2021 report that we published. To get rid of my scan done. Okay, so do I just click the top, this one, the green? Okay. Yes, you saw in the last one there have been many other. There's been many different State of the World's Fathers reports, including your wonderful State of Nordic Fathers reports. But why did we need one? One of the reasons was that there had been State of the World's Mothers reports, State of the World's Children's reports that UNICEF produced, but there was nothing on men and boys. And Bumundo was an organisation working with another network called Men Care that felt that it was really important to look at fathers. The belief that gender equality and women's rights won't be achieved without engaging men as caregivers, that equality in unpaid care and domestic work, and I'll talk about that a bit later, is key if we are to address the root causes of gender inequality, which is why I wanted to ask that question about how much this affects gender equality. Fatherhood can be a tipping point, research shows, either towards more gender equal relationships, or, if things are not in place, towards much more orthodox, I think you called it, masculinities and orthodox relationships. And there are benefits of involved fatherhood, engaged fatherhood, not only for women, but for children and for men themselves and for society. And we've seen so much of that this morning. I've been really, really impressed with the presentations that you've come up with, the detail of what's happening in the Nordic countries. So that was the first report, and I think we had no idea of what kind of impact it was going to have. We knew that it was it was needed, but actually we ended up launching it in 10 different countries. We had Chelsea Clinton coming to the launch in New York. There's been more than 30,000 downloads, 40 million social media mentions. It's had a lot of coverage, and I think, and translated into French, German, Portuguese, Russian, Polish and Spanish. And it's also had some policy impact, together with other things, difficult to measure if you're an evaluator, but it's contributed to changes in policy leave in the US, Brazil, Netherlands and elsewhere, I think.
Ja miksei toimisi. Täällä ollaan siis Musiikkitalolla. Nordic Fathers on Paternity Leave Conferenceissa, ja tämä on järjestetty täällä 31.3.2022. Ja tilaisuuden avasi Thomas Blomqvist, tasa-arvoministerimme, ja sitten kello 10.15 Tom Timperi piti alustuksen Findings and Opposition on the Report State of Nordic Fathers. Sitten Tomin alustuksen jälkeen Kislasson, Ingolfur V. Kislasson University of Icelandilta. Hän piti esityksen A Statistic Overview of Fathers Family Leave in the Nordic Countries. Ja kommentaattorina hänellä oli tässä hänen esitykseensä Mats Hertzberg, Föreningen Vårdnad Boende Umgänge i Sverige, ja sitten Heimir Hilmarsson Equal Parenting Icelandista. Eli Heimir Hilmarsson ja Mats Hertzberg kommentoivat Gislassonin tätä esitystä. Sitten pienen tauon jälkeen Johanna Lammitaskula, tutkimuspäällikkö Terveyden ja hyvinvoinnin laitokselta, piti alustuksen Finland's Parental Leave Reform in Nordic Comparison. What's in it for fathers? Ja tässä Johanna Lammitaskulan esityksessä Eppu Saarela oli kommentaattorina ja Eppu edustaa tässä siis Miesjärjestöjen keskusliittoa ja Jesper Loose vastaavaa tanskalaista järjestöä. Ja nyt sitten lounastauon jälkeen jatkamme ja iltapäivällä sitten on tulossa Involved Fatherhood in the Nordic Context, Dominant Narratives, Divergent Approaches. Ja tämän esityksen pitää Kanhild Reglan Farstad VID Specialized Universitystä. Ja sitten hänen esityksensä jälkeen Johanna Terävä Jyväskylän yliopistosta pitää esityksen Involved Fatherhood After Divorce, Father's Perspectives on Co-Parenting After Parents Separation. Ja Johanna Terävän alustuksen kommentaattorina Joonas Kekkonen, Miessakit, ja sitten Gudorm Grund Mansforum yhteisöstä. Gudorm Grund, Joonas Kekkonen ja Gudorm Grund. Näin. Ja sitten Johanna Terävän esityksen jälkeen tulee State of the World Fathers Report. Nikki van der Gaag pitää tämän koko maailman esityksen. Ja sitten tuossa 15.15 aloitetaan paneelikeskustelu, panel discussion of themes of the day, the positive effects of participating fatherhood and cooperative parenting. The positive effects of parental leave fathers have taken especially to children, fathers and the relationships between them and how to encourage and normalize fathers' participation in parenting and taking parental leave. Ja moderaattorina tässä on Saan Riks ja sitten tähän paneeliin osallistuvat Mats Herzberg, Haimiri Hilmarsson, Joonas Kekkonen ja näin tällä ohjelmalla mennään tonne kello 16. Eli katsotaan tässä taukojen aikana sitten lisää näitä yhteenvetoja. Eli kuuntelet ja katselet Radio Vapaa Helsingin koosteita täältä Nordic Fathers on Paternity Leave -konferenssista Helsingin Musiikkitalolta. Ja täällä paikan päällä Perussäijät ry:n edustajana Marko Ekvist toimittaa näitä tiivistelmiä tässä. Okei, palataan tuossa myöhemmin vielä asiaan.
Positive effects, parts, but I think I start with how do we encourage and normalize fathers' participation in parenting and taking parental leave? What are your ideas? How do we get parental leaves better used by men? What are the obstacles and what are the main causes for men to use them?
Well, if you talk, are you talking parental leave now or talking fathers? Because it's somewhat different. But if you talk fathers, which is what I want to talk about, then I think there are changes in the law necessary. That some of these things they have to be mandatory. There isn't going to be real change unless they're mandatory. So that would be my answer.
Yeah, okay, well, I can be a sociologist and then emphasize the importance of culture. So the law isn't enough by itself because, you can have the law and you can have the opportunities, but if the men don't want to use these paternal leave, and then it's not that good. So I would think that for some people, money works. You know, you have to have the good benefits in order to make it, you know, like worthwhile. But then again, you have to really have the norm. The men have to feel it. Like they have to feel it to really want to stay at home. And of course, I know that like most of the men do want it, but we still have like lots of groups. Maybe those groups that are kind of disadvantaged. So we have to like we have to make those benefits better for them, and then we have to, like for us middle class men, we have to change the culture and the norm.
I agree with the benefits point, because that's another thing where at least the work I'm doing, where I can see where there are economic drivers for not then granting days to the other parent, or for that matter for one parent to go for single custody. Because single custody then also usually means residency and visitation rights and all that sort of thing, and it means more benefits and a lot more benefits. And that, I think those incentives, they have to be abolished. And if a single parents need economic support, that should be taken care of through other channels, not by that parent getting single custody and residency, because we know that the effects of that are so negative. On the issue of then attitude in society, I agree with that also, of course, but I see a huge change in that attitude. I'm not a sociologist. My career was in other areas, and I've only been involved with this for about 10 years. But even in that time, I think I have seen a huge change, and particularly amongst the young fathers. The young fathers today, they think very, very differently from what a father 10 or 20 fathers. So that attitude is changing, and these fathers, these young fathers, and perhaps then also young mothers, or the fathers and mothers of today, they have changed their attitudes, and they will continue to change attitudes of society, would be my point.
Saying like that, it's a generation. The generation after generation gets things more equal.
Yes, one could put it that way.
Yeah.
When the first legislation in Iceland about parental leave was, they were working on it in 2000, they thought there was 2 factors that were needed for fathers to take the parental leave, and it was it had to be well paid, because fathers they will not take parental leave if it will hurt the family financially, and it has to be non-transferable. It has to be exclusive for fathers, so they will take it, and it has to be paid by the government, paid by the state. These 3 factors they thought were necessary for fathers to take parental leave, and I think it's still valid today. But I also want to add on, because in 2001, almost every father in Iceland took parental leave. I think it was about 90%. We are not paying as the roof has been lowered, and we are not. I think the percent is lower today, but we know what is needed. But we also need to think about fathers who are not residential parents. Paternity leave shouldn't only be for fathers who are living with a mother. It should be for all children that have fathers, that fathers would be able to take paternity leave. And I think we can decrease conflicts between parents and promote parental shared parenting if we start with two custodial parents when children are born, regardless of the residential status, and a social benefits to both parents, regardless of the residence of the child. We should start to look at if the child has two parents, both of them are supposed to care for the children, and both of them should be giving social support to do it. And this would decrease conflict, and parents would work more together.
I think we learned today that the use of father's paternal leave is lower in a lower socioeconomic low groups. But also, if I understood it correctly from Fastad's presentation, that the sort of inclusive fatherhood is lower in those sections as well. Is there any ideas how to improve this group of men to take better, participating better in parenting, fatherhood?
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing problem that, like in higher economical groups, like these indicators with equality are always higher in other aspects as well. So it's not only parenting, it's other subjects as well. And I think that, as I said, we can use those with the disadvantaged groups, benefits more than, kind of like this culture changing. You have to kind of like, you have to have social services that tackle the problems before they grow into these intergenerational problems that I see, in the child custody services. Like most of the problems that, fathers have, they are like inherited from their parents, and that's why we have to have this strong social security network and strong social work in order to make it better for the next generation. And I think that's one big issue. And then with the the middle class people, you can use the Twitter and those other kind of like media outlets and try to affect the norm. But especially with those groups that we heard like lots of presentations today, we have to be more adaptive. We have to think bigger with them.
I very much agree with that, because there's a subgroup that's perhaps socioeconomic, but not necessarily, but there's a problem subgroup there. And I think we need to pay much more focus on that particular group. And then the middle class parents, that of course the separation is always difficult, but in the end they then usually end up with something that everybody can live with anyway. Usually. Huge generalization, but it's usually true. But you have a subgroup there where it's not possible, if it's an old parents or if it's because one parent cannot or don't want to or simply cannot cooperate. And this group is, this is the most disastrous group that does most damage and also to the child or to the children. And there we should put in the efforts and resources very, very early on. Because they are the ones that are coming back to social services, and they are sort of repeat customers, not only for social services, but also of course they are the ones going back to court time after time after time perhaps. So much more resources be put in the problem areas.
We're talking about the high conflicts. Were you asking about that? No. What group were you talking about?
Well, I didn't use the word high conflict because that's a debated term also, so I deliberately didn't use it. But yes, I'm talking about the parents where there are then huge problems, and if they are then inherited, if there are economic drivers, because there's of course a lot of psychological illness and psychological issues. And they need to be addressed. I mean, in my organization we have a saying that if you don't address the issues with the parents, you will not address the issues of the child. So you have to really you have to go for the parent first and address the issues that the parent or parents may have. And only then can you start solving the issues for the child. And that's of course simplistically put again, but I think that's the point.
I think I just missed the first question when you were asking how to get them get the parents to get paternity leave in what groups?
Fathers get paternal leave in a like lower socioeconomic.
In lower socioeconomic. Okay, yes, yeah,
That's why it shows here that in a couple of presentations that
I think firstly they have to be able to take the parental leave. They have to be able to stop working. And in Iceland, you get 80% of your salary up to some roof. And if you are with low salary, it is a lot to lose 20%, and they're just not capable of doing it. So I don't think we should have 80% for everybody. We should have some bottom as well as roof, so everybody could be able to take it.
Okay, Jesper from Denmark talked about this hidden paternal leave. There's a lot of people, lots of men are sort of using their paternal leaves but are not applying it, or it doesn't show in any statistics, or they don't get any money. What do you think about this? Is it true? Is it happening in Sweden, for instance? Because in Finland I know a lot of like entrepreneurs, small businesses are they are not taking paternal leave, but they are spending time with the kid and doing the job at the same time, because they can't get off the firm. Of course, this goes with the women as well, women entrepreneurs. But have you any ideas on this?
I think working hours has changed, and we have more people with flexible hours. And when you have flexible hours, it's not always necessary to take paternity leave or parental leave, because especially when there are two parents and both with flexible hours, then they can arrange the times and keep on working. I think some people, they are not taking the benefits, but still they are taking time off to care for children.
Yeah, but then again, you know, the self-employed, the entrepreneurs are usually in a very disadvantaged position, because they're usually in fields that don't really, you know, they don't get that much salary. So they should get the benefit, because that would, you know, really, it would really help them to kind of, you know, concentrate on the paternal leave. And of course, maybe it's not possible, maybe it's because of the whole security system is kind of, you know, it's based on needs. And maybe we don't need that kind of system. Maybe we need to think it further, that is the whole system a bit more, is it too complicated to handle these kind of situations? Maybe we need like less benefits, but those benefits that would be like universal and you know, like more gracious. And I think that's one issue, that you can't really like count everyone, all kinds of, you know, situations.
This question of using the percentages of using of parental leave by fathers and mothers, do you think the idea is to get the percentage as high as it possible, or do you think it's more, so is it more like a politics of equality, or is it a family politics?
The question is if it's for the policies to decide or the family to decide. Was that the question?
Yeah, no, in a sense, yeah.
I think it needs to be a mix of both. And as I mentioned, I think there really has to be changes in the law and how the law is enforced, that is mandatory changes, so that you don't get to choose exactly what you will. Then again, in most cases then, I think some of these decisions or part of the decisions could be left then to the family. But again, these are in the instances where the prospects of good cooperation, where the prospects of that are already there. They are the ones that will be able to agree on this and come up with a solution that's relatively good for the family and for both parents and for the child. So again, the problem areas are with the families where the parties cannot agree, either because they don't want to, or they are simply not capable of agreeing, or because there are economic drivers that very strongly favors one solution. So that's why I really think that it's we need to have also mandatory statutes.
Yes, I think parental leave, in my opinion, it should be that each parent has a fixed amount of time for parental leave, and it should not be transferable. Not anything. Yeah, just like it's not the same, but I can compare it to just you have, if you're working for the state, you have 6 weeks for summer vacation each year, and you cannot transfer your leave to your spouse. And I just think this should be the same with parental leave. You have, each parent has this amount of time. I don't know how much time is enough, but and it seems like when parental leave are extended, we want more, but when do we have enough? We will have to find that out, but I think each part to just have its own parental leave, and it should not be transferable. And if usually when we hear about the need of transferable leave, people are mentioning the mother's health, for example. But I think we should meet that in other ways, because and it's of course it's more likely that women will suffer some health issues regarding the birth of the child, and that should be met just in other ways, not with parental leave, just with other ways.
Yeah, well, the question was that which is better, freedom or equality? And of course we want both, but can we have those? Because it's always freedom against the desired outcomes. But if we think that how can we achieve the good equality and still leave some freedom to the families? I agree that we need the mandatory part, of course, but it isn't always good for the low-income families to have just the same amount of the mandatory parental leave. Because if you think that maybe the other parent is getting more paid, maybe it's good for the family too, that the other parent is working more while the other is taking care of the children. And of course, now we can disagree and say, but still, it's more important that both of the parents are equal time at home. But we really don't know that it's the best way to get the equality. Because maybe if the family has more money, maybe they get to spend more time together, maybe they have time to, you know, be with the children and you know, kind of like invest more. So I would think that there are some problems in the Finnish way, you know, offering the momentary childcare leave, you know, when you get like 300 euros per month, and like it's very popular in Finland. That well, mostly women use it, and it's highly debated that is it really like pro-equality? That it's kind of like this poverty trap, because it's not really good to stay in it, but you still can't get out of it once you go there. So I think it's really a problem with that. So we should kind of encourage both of the parents to, of course, have the parental leave, but the freedom can be equal as well. It can really like lead to equal results.
Yeah, maybe because I'm always talking about possibilities, and maybe with the rights, but I hope that we can feel and be equal and still decide differently than someone has said that it should be like this. So, and find the best way. And even in the new Finnish system, you can share it 50-50 if you want. But you can share it 60-40 if you want. And that's nice. Okay, if we think these parental leave systems are in quite good ways in Nordic countries, what do we men have to do too? What do we have to do to use them better, or use more of them, or be better parents, maybe? I'm only asking big questions.
Who wants to do that one?
Well, maybe I can answer because I'm probably going to be a father soon, so I can only like speak for myself. And well, I didn't really have a good connection with my father. He wasn't really part of my life, so my kind of like this inner vision is to do completely otherwise. So I feel it strongly that I have to like connect with my future child, and the emotional bond is something that is really like natural to me, and I feel that we as men, I don't know if it's a Finnish thing or if it's a Nordic thing, that we need to kind of connect more sides in ourselves. It doesn't really mean that like every man has to be the same. No, it doesn't. But we still have to like kind of connect more and find like new needs inside myself. I think this is at least for me some kind of a middle class way.
Sort of redefining fatherhood, redefining being a man.
Yeah.
So, are Swedes already there? Because many in your country are doing it so well.
Well, I'm not a Swede to start with. I'm Finnish, you know. So, but I lived in Sweden I haven't lived in Finland for 40 years, and I have lived in Sweden for close to 30. But I don't know. I mean, obviously the very long parental leave and also the fairly high degree of uptake by fathers is a very, very good thing. I really do think that. But apart from that, I think I see several other countries are catching up and even surpassing Sweden now. Yes, things are fairly good in Sweden, but there are lots of room for improvement.
I saw a headline that use of parental leave is coming down among men in Sweden.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That's interesting. And that's not a pandemic thing then?
I don't know. I only read the headline.
Okay.
Now I'm losing. Yeah. Well, let's change the subject a bit. Let's go to the being a father after divorce, after the parents' separation. I bet a lot of people here want to talk about that as well. How can we take care that the good connection with children stays? again a big question. Who wants to start? I don't before I change.
What can we do to make parents which are separated to share parental leave?
No, the parents will leave.
Parental leave, yeah, all right, okay. It's like I said, in Iceland and in many other countries, we are dividing parents into A parents and B parents if they are not living together. And A parents, they will have all rights and all benefits, all support, and the other parent is without any support and has to rely on good communication with the other one and also supporting the other household while trying to support his own. So it's a really different situation people are living with and trying to do their duties. And I think and I believe that if the state is willing to support both homes, both families, it will be a really good investment for any society. We will have stronger individuals if we are supporting both homes, and I think we have more poverty in non-residential children homes than in residential homes, and poverty has the same effects on children if it's there, just the same as if it's on the residential home. Because when children are living in poverty, and this is a real matter in Iceland, that fathers, many fathers, they are poor trying to care for the children while still supporting another household. And when they have the children they know they don't have money and they have to how can I say it? They know they are not able to ask their parent for such things because they know the parent doesn't have money for it. So the children, they are taking care of the parent. It's a role reversal thing that will happen when it's poverty, and I think we should support both homes all the time, and it will benefit the society.
Yeah, in child protective services, you really get to see that like most of the problems in families that are separated are always they are family problems. Like they're not like alone the problems of the child, and that's why the current system isn't really enough to tackle the problems with separated couples. Always when you have some sort of custody situation, the most problems are kind of created because of the relationship between the separated couple. And that's why it's very it's difficult to kind of discuss, the paternal leave, because it's so strongly connected to the relationship of the couple that has children, and that's why it's kind of a bigger issue. And I would think that if couples that are separated would if they would realize that they have to think about these issues at the same time they get separated, and we would need some sort of counseling through that period. And I know that many men that I know through NGOs and in my inner circle, they have problems with their with their children because they have problems with their ex-spouses and ex-wives, and I would think that would be so much easier for these men if they if they had some sort of a revolution in relationships as well.
I very much agree. Assuming then that we have the necessary changes in the law or adjustments in the law, but assuming then that gets in place eventually, then these and there are the support services there. I would put a part of the responsibility on the men, because the men, of course, or the fathers, also have to be able to seek support and willing to seek support. And there, of course, traditionally, that's much more difficult for men. Men don't go and seek support, and that's perhaps an attitude issue that's but hopefully also changing a little bit over time. But the men have a responsibility to seek help also, or take the help that's offered, I think.
Like for father holding to his parenting role after the divorce, what do you think about shared parenting and dual residence? Is it the answer?
The answer, in my opinion, is the two equal homes, dual resident with equal status, and also Fabricius has identified that even though parents are not capable of communicating well, equal parenting is the best option for the children. And we have new law in Iceland now about dual resident since 1st of January. So people, they can agree on dual resident, but it's still they have one legal address, and but if there are dual resident, the benefits are split between two homes, and social benefits in Iceland, they are not high. They are only supporting the lowest level. So and even though I said earlier that there is more poverty between the non-residential parents than the residential parents, we still have poverty also in single resident parents. It's just the society is like we need two people to provide for a home, and otherwise there is a poverty there. And when implementing this new law, they are taking this little support approach to one home and dividing it into two parts, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think they should have put in more money, and we would have benefit from that in the future. And also this dual resident is if the parents do not agree on everything, either one of them, they can terminate the agreement anytime, and then all benefits will go to the residential parent with a legal address, and no discussion about it. So it's not this is not equal status for homes. We still have one parent with a legal address which can control everything, because if the other parent will not agree, the agreement
is terminated and you will lose yours. So, but this is step in the right direction, that this possibility is there, but I think 2 equal homes should be the way.
I agree with that as well. I mean, shared parenting, the concept of shared parenting, then, which definitely means joint consent to the father in Sweden. And it was about the same in Norway. And that's a huge loss. Now, there are cases where really joint custody is not possible and where custody should not be given to a particular parent. Of course there are. But these numbers are way, way off the mark.
I totally agree.
Pardon?
I totally agree that the whole thing should start, that this is the normal,
Yes.
and then we'll check what's
And there could be good reasons for not awarding joint custody. Of course there can be. But that should be the exception.
Yeah, well, in principle, I agree that shared parenthood, that it kind of, it requires kind of dual residency. But then again, coming from Child Protective Services, I know that dual residency doesn't always mean that it's dual, and shared parenting doesn't mean that it's really shared. So I would really like to concentrate on the reality that it doesn't mean that if you share the parenting that the responsibilities are really shared, and it doesn't really mean that it's good for the child. So we can have a situation where in one hand there is kind of like the equality point, and then we have the good for the child point. But of course, as you said, it's not everyone, but there are many cases that where child lives in both homes that is totally unbearable, and well, I think that, but nevertheless, it should be baseline that it's shared. Baseline, then we start to investigate that. What happens next? Is there some sort of a problem with that? And I think that's a cultural thing, and that's a normal thing, and and that's something that men would benefit from if we started to think differently.
I have a comment on this whole equality issue. And I realize this is now a conference on paternity leave and men's issues and all that. But I don't think we should debate the issue of equality, because equality is not the goal in itself. That's not, why do we want to achieve equality? Well, we want to achieve equality because we think it's good. We think it's good for men, we think it's good for women, and in particular, in cases of family policies, we think that what we now call equality is in the best interest of the child. So that's what we should focus on, rather than the somehow achieving absolute equality.
Back to the dual residency, I think there are a lot of details that has to be solved, that it works really well, but I think that would be the baseline. Could, for instance, be answer for Johanna Terävä's observations that people are, maybe men, would have better belief in officials when they start negotiating these things. This screen says we have 20 seconds, so I only have your final answer for you. What kind of would be your fantasy parental leave model?
Like an ideal of...
Ideal.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to start.
Repeat the question. Ideal parental leave model. Right. How long? How much money? Who uses it?
How long will be? I think it's quite generous in Sweden already, so of course it could be longer. But I think it is quite generous, so I wouldn't focus too much on that. I think the one third. I think is good, and that you can then, because families are different and circumstances are different, and so 1/3 then the family or the parents can agree upon. But if they can't agree, then even that third should be split 50-50. If they don't come to an agreement, then that should be 50-50. So that's one model which I think would be nice.
Resources in Iceland, they show that if parental leave is negotiable, then you can transfer it. It's actually maternity leave, and the goal of the paternity leave in Iceland, at least, is to ensure togetherness with both parents, it's equality, and it's equal payments in the labor market, which is also, there are 2 equality points, which is the goal. So if the law is not meeting the goal, so why do we have the law? We don't need the law if they're not meeting the goal. And the goal is equal. So I say that it should be non-transferable, equal parental to each parent. Freedom, if freedom would ensure equality, we wouldn't have been considering in this legislation.
Yeah, like from the current models that are realistic, I agree with you that the model of 1/3 is it's good, and I would drive for that. But every like paternal leave system has its drawbacks because it's a system. And it's a matter of like whole security system, and now it's the issue kind of broadens. And so I would make it more simple, like altogether. I would have some sort of benefits that you could get, like regardless of your like specific status of being a specific resident with a specific child and having a specific time at home. And I would make it like easier for the individual to kind of investigate their own needs and see what we need as a family. I guess you could call it freedom in some respects, but then again I think that you could call it like freedom to make good choices. So of course, like the government is always, it's always important to kind of like to push people in the right direction. But if you don't have kind of like the inner meaning, inner culture and the norm with it, it will be superficial, and then it can have some kind of more drawbacks and these loops. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, my fantasy, and I'm jealous of one thing in Swedish system, that you can use for how many, 8 years, even 12-year-old kids, you can use parental leave. And that is what I hope we will start aiming for in Finland.
Because it's, when we talk about parental leave on the other hand and freedom on the other, it's, this costs a lot of money, and the state is paying a lot of money to meet this goal of the law. And parents, they are free. They don't need to take the parental leave. They are free to do it as they did before without these payments. And so we are not diminishing. We are not decreasing freedom. We are just offering payments to support equality. So I don't think it's right to talk about freedom in this sentence, because the society is paying for a huge amount of money.
Okay, we are like 6 minutes over time, and I'm out of conclusions after this day. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mats, Eppu, Heiner, and thank you all. And let's go and have some snacks and drinks again.
All right.